All right, well, welcome everybody to today's virtual tech talk. Today we're going to be talking about smartphone photography. We have a special guest presenter this week who's going to get us started in just a minute. But before we get started, I wanted to say thank you for joining. We're going to be recording today's session and posting it to the library's YouTube channel. I will send out a link to that next week probably, as well as the slides from today's program. So without further ado, I just wanted to say welcome. My name is Casey. I am the digital literacy librarian for Martin County and have had the pleasure of seeing many of you over the past year with our virtual tech talks. Very excited to have my colleague Stephanie presenting to you today. So Stephanie, take it away.
All right, thank you very much, Casey. Hello, everyone out there. I'm Stephanie. I am a lead library specialist with the Martin County Library System. And today we're going to talk about something that's very dear to me, smartphone photography. Just before we get started, I wanted to move on to the next slide, please. Okay, just so we all know, and if you need accommodations for accessibility, here's the information. You can let us know, and we'd be happy to accommodate you. Next slide, please. So this is what we're going to be talking about today. This is just the very tip of the iceberg, and I'm going to be pausing between sections so we can all have a chance to ask questions, see what's going on. So the first thing we're going to do is talk about basic composition and editing. Next, we're going to talk about organization of photos. We're going to talk about sharing them, editing apps, and next steps. So before we begin, I want you to consider this quote. Okay, this is by Jarvis. He's a very famous photographer, and this quote is, "The best camera is the one you have with you." And I want you to kind of think about that for a moment, because this is going to be our MO going forward. And it means that the best camera for whatever you're doing is not necessarily the latest and the greatest. It's the one that you have on you right at that moment in time. So you could have just a pinhole box camera or a 3,000 megapixel top of the line camera with the lens the size of your arm, and either way, that's what you've got to work with. So I believe in you. Moving right along. And then there's this quote, learn the rules so you know when to break them. And whether you take anything from this class or not, hopefully you do, you'll learn when it's important to do something a certain way and when it's okay to do things your way. The fun part about art is learning when to do what. Moving right along. So if you take away two things from this class, these are the only two things I need you to take away, is that lighting is everything always, and the rule of thirds. And I'm going to break that down in a moment, but I want to focus on lighting for a moment. Photography is Greek for writing with light. So light is understandably a huge part of the game. Okay, and as for the rule of thirds, this is just a way to better compose your photos and make them more interesting and visually appealing. And I'll get to that in a second. But for now, let's talk about lighting. So too much or too little light can ruin a picture. Now, in the picture in the slide, we have a nice scene. And to the left of it, we have it underexposed, which means it doesn't have a lot of light. The term used there is muddy. Remember, you know the saying, clear as mud. This is the same thing. And to the right is overexposed. And you can see everything is, the term for that is blown out. So it's just boom, like a big explosion. You can't really see anything. All the detail for both under and over is lost. Now, sometimes you can fix this in editing, but let's not rely on this. We want to get it right the first time because you're only going to have one chance. Now, lighting seems like common sense, but it can be incredibly temperamental. You're going to have to trust your eye to make sure things are properly exposed, and your phone camera will never expose things the way, say, a dedicated camera will, or it won't always reflect accurately what you see. So you have to be ready to kind of deal with those inevitabilities. Next, please. Okay. Okay, now the rule of thirds. If you've ever played tic-tac-toe, you already know the rule of thirds. Basically, you are mentally, or if it's on your phone, and it generally is, you can put a grid line, you can put a set of grids on your phone, okay? And you see in the slide, the screen is divided into threes. And you see those blue dots on those red circles. Those are called PowerPoints. Now, PowerPoints are the intersection of the grid where your eye tends to gravitate, okay? This is getting into more of the science and psychology behind it, but this is really cool. So the upper left corner of the center box, okay, that is where your eyes are going to go to most of the time. Whereas the lower right corner is where your eye goes less often. So if you want to use the rule of thirds to your advantage, you want to position your photos probably closer in the upper left quadrant of the upper left third of that. And it is built into your phone. You have to kind of dig around for it. It's under, I know under iPhone it's under grid. But in Android, I think it's under the same thing. So, but it is on your phone, and it makes your pictures look more interesting. For example, okay, so here is an example of the rule of thirds in action. Notice how the cheetah's head is on that major PowerPoint that I talked about just a couple moments ago. And notice also how your eye went directly to that point. That's the power of the rule of thirds. And just a little side note, and this is really, really artsy stuff here, but on the composition, the curvature of the cheetah mimics what's called the Fibonacci spiral or the golden ratio. The curve of the cheetah is going to allow your eye to flow through the photo more organically. It's kind of like you're following a trail, and it makes it a lot more pleasing. One more thing going forward is the concept of lead room and nose or nose room, okay? So this is another thing that's important. And it refers to the same thing. It's the amount of distance between the subject and the edge of the frame. It implies movement, the direction the subject is going to go. Whether or not it actually will go that way, we don't know, but this is your brain assuming it's going to go in the direction that it's facing. With the cheetah looking to its right, we assume that it will naturally move to the right. So while a Fibonacci spiral involves the movement of your eyes, lead room refers to the potential movement of the subject. Now, again, this is super technical, but I just thought this is really cool stuff. So feel free to ignore this part. Okay, so now the next thing I want to talk about is depth of field. Okay, now let's think back to geometry. I know that might be a bit for us, and especially I'm not that good with math, but I do remember my x-axis, which is the horizontal or left to right, and the y-axis, which is vertical and up and down. Now we know that photography is a flat or two-dimensional medium. By adding the depth of field, which is your z-axis going front to back, you can add depth to your photos. Okay, this is the distance between you, the photographer, and your subject. By adding this, you take them from flat into deep, and I have an example of that. So here's a great example of depth of field. You know that this is a flat image. You know it's not 3D, but your brain thinks it is, and that's the cool thing. With the lines between the flowers, your brain thinks, oh, this actually is going into the distance, when it really doesn't. And on that note, the rows of, so here it is breaking it down for you. The green arrow going up and down, starting from the bottom of the frame and going all the way through the top, through the middle of the windmill, that's your y-axis. Your x-axis is the horizon line, and that's going where the sky meets the ground. And if you notice, if you remember back from rule of thirds, you can see that this is following actually one of the rule of thirds line. So you can see already how it makes things a little bit more interesting. And if we start from the windmill and follow any of those lines moving outwards from the flowers, that's your z-axis. That's what illustrates depth. And you can see how it just takes your photo to the next level. So that's about it for composition. I know that's a lot to learn in a little bit of time, but so far, do we have any questions? Does anybody have any questions about composition?
No questions in the chat box yet, Stephanie, but just to let everybody know as a reminder, if you have questions as we go along, throw them into the chat and we'll answer them as we pause throughout the program today.
Okay, thank you, Casey. Okay, so we're moving right along. So we've made our photo, we've taken it, it looks great, but now it's time for editing. Now, I break editing down myself into two types. There's technical edits and artistic edits. For me, a technical edit involves making minor tweaks to an image, things such as cropping or color correction and tilt correction. So cropping is cutting a picture to a different size, and it can easily change the emphasis of the photograph. So say you have a photo of a group of people, but you only want to look at one person. So you'd crop or cut the others out so only the subject is front and center. And then there's color correction, which is typically used to correct for the lighting. Brightness determines how rich the colors are, whereas contrast determines how dark the shadows are. Be careful with these, as going overboard with either one of these settings can ruin a perfectly good picture. And I have an example of that coming up. Last but not least is tilt correction. Okay, it's also known as horizon correction, and that's good for, say you're on a cruise and you're taking a picture of the sunset, and you get back and you're like, oh well, oh no, the horizon line is a little skewed, it's tilted. But that's where tilt correction or horizon correction can come in. You can just write it within the program. So here's an example of a photo that I actually took. This is up in Boston. Now, technical edits are often very subtle and barely noticeable to anyone except the photographer. This is an older presentation, so I had to really go and look back and see what things I did with this one. And as you can, on the left, the colors are a little muddy. There, you don't see really the details. What pops out on between the left photo and the right, which is the trees. So on the left photo, the trees are kind of muddy. You don't see that much detail, but on the right, they really stand out. But if you look at the buildings from the left photo to the before photo to the right, the after photo, you've lost some detail in those. So that's another thing you want to be careful of. I mean, it is a gray day. It's not under the best lighting conditions to begin with, but that really didn't need to be changed that much at all. You might feel differently, but that's what I'm talking about when you change, when you bump up the contrast or mess with the brightness. One part of your picture can be fine, but the next might not be. It's all a balancing act. The next up is artistic edits. Now, if you're familiar with programs like Snapchat or Instagram, that's more or less what this part covers. They don't really improve the photo so much as they enhance a photo. So filters. So these are used to add a layer of color or effects onto a photo. So very common ones are sepia, which is a brown tone, or black and white, or if you've seen film photography, it has a different look than a digital photo. So you'd be adding that in. Okay, text, that's just adding words or captions. If you remember those little word balloon stickers they used to sell in the stores, and you could put like little balloons over people's heads so it looks like they're saying, hey, wish you were here. That's the same thing. Okay. Borders, that's just like adding a framework. So that's, like we know the Polaroid with the instant photo with the white border. That's an example of adding that, but you're adding it digitally. And last but not, okay, so excuse me one moment. Okay, text, borders, and graphics. So that's the last one here is graphics. They can be thought of like the stickers, like we were saying earlier with the little thought balloons, or like you just put a little happy face or a star. They're just there. It's just like you're putting stickers on a photo album. And those tend to be in separate editing apps. So text, borders, graphics, you're going to need a different editing app for that. Whereas most phones today will let you have a filter or two. Well, they have more than two. There's a good amount of photos, filters built into your phone. All right. Next up, so here's an example of what I mean by artistic edits. The picture on the left is the before photo. It's a photo from Boston. It's something I took a few years ago. And it's some boat chains that are very focused. And then we have the city in the background. So that's another example of depth of field. Okay. Now, if we look at the right, the photo on the right is the after photo. So what I've done here is I've added what's called the sepia filter, which gives it that brownish color. I added a texture filter, which you can kind of see over it. It's a little hard to see. You can also see a bit of a soft focus filter. So the center of the frame is very clear, but as you go further out, it gets blurrier and blurrier. And then last but not least, I put an old-timey frame around it. So it looks like this is something that was taken in, say, 1909 as opposed to 2019. And which is going to bring me to my next thing, talking about editing apps. The app that I used for those photos and for most of my photo editing work is called Snapseed. Okay, it's a really great app. It's run by Google. It has both preset filters and edits, but you can also do very, very special, very tiny tweaks on your own. So they have presets and then they have manual mode where you can do whatever you want. Pixlr is a cool app. You can both have it on your desktop as well as your phone. On the desktop, I believe the site it's called Pixlr X. They have a few different ones there, Pixlr X and Pixlr E, but it's all free. You can download it or just use it from the web browser. They're just as good, and they do have some paid options, but the free options are just fine. And last but not least is Photoshop Express. Now, I know what you're thinking. You hear Photoshop and you're like, oh man, this is the wild stuff. And it's a watered down version of like full bodied Photoshop. And you can still get a lot of quality edits out of this. It can do incredible things, but there is a learning curve. If you're just getting into photo editing, you might want to go with Snapseed or even Pixlr to begin with. There are multiple editing apps out there, but these two are, these three are the ones that I would recommend. There are plenty of others. You just got to find which one works best for you. And if we move on to the next slide, this is where you can find these apps. You don't need an account to use any of them. And of course, we're going to be sending these slides out to everyone at the end. I think it's either next week, I believe. So we're not going to leave you high and dry. You are going to be able to find these products, or you can Google them whenever you feel like. Okay, so that's it for editing. Does anybody have any questions about editing?
Yes, we have a few questions that came through the chat, so I'm gonna see if I can catch them all since we have a minute. One person asked, where do you press for filters, captions, etc. on your mobile device?
Okay, so I'm only speaking for an iPhone. at the moment, so you'll have to bear with me. I apologize to all the Android users out there. But typically let me back up a minute. When you go into your photo album app on your iPhone, if you tap on a photo, there should be a little option that you could tap on to edit. And then there's going to be all sorts of different options in there where you can when you can add the filters. Captions, you need a separate app for. I would do Snapseed or Pixlr or Photoshop if you wanted to add like captions on top of the photos. I hope, does that answer your question?
I think so. And this is a good time to, for anybody who hasn't taken one of these classes with us before, if there's ever questions that we can't answer or that we feel like we could provide extra material for you to use, we'll send that out when we send out the slides and the link to the YouTube videos as well. So I made a note to grab some screenshots from an Android device to show different examples. So. And then speaking of Android, how do you change the depth of field on an Android? And can you change the depth of field after you've taken the picture?
Ooh, oh, so to change it on an Android. Usually when it comes to doing depth of field and changing it, I know on an iPhone, again, my frame of reference for Android is very outdated, but I'm assuming it's similar to an iPhone. What you can do is you can do a special focus. Mm-hmm. And this is like if you have the option to compose. So say you're taking a picture of a table, all right, and you have the flowers, and then a little bit behind the flowers you have a plate, and a little bit behind the plate you have a glass. So when you're holding your phone up to take those photos, you can tap on the screen and it'll focus. It'll bring the flowers into focus, but the plate and the glass are going to be steadily out of focus. If you wanted to focus on the plate, you would tap on the plate. And if you wanted to focus on the glass, you would tap on the glass, but that would make everything else steadily out of focus. So that's how I know you can do that on iPhone. So I assume you can do that on Android as well.
Yes, we got a comment from that person saying, yes, it works the same on Android. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. Yeah. Anything else?
Yeah, a couple more questions. One just comment that I'll say thank you for is, could we make the PDF file available before the class so that anybody attending can make notes on it? That's a great comment. Thank you so much, and something we'll definitely consider for our future classes. And then another question we have in the chat, are you familiar with editing within the iPhone photo app, especially tagging a photo with a title or remark without leaving the photo albums?
If I understand what you're talking about, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that's kind of what I'm mentioning here. Like there's in an iPhone, there are two ways that you can edit a photo. You can edit directly. It's kind of hard to describe over here, but I'm going to do my very best. And I thank you all so much for bearing with me. So if I were to take a photo with my phone right now, and you can't really see me doing it, but so I have my camera up and I just took a photo of the room that I'm in. And in an iPhone, the picture usually goes to the lower left of the screen. If you tap on that, it'll bring up the photo, and then you'll have then across the bottom, you'll have a share icon, a heart icon, and an edit button. Excuse me. With that edit button, you can bring up to change the exposure, the brilliance, the highlights. The middle, you can change the different color temperatures, which is the filters, and then you can do like your cropping and your straightening and what have you. So from what the question is saying, that's how I would suggest editing it. And again, yeah, you can edit it in the Photos app doing the exact same thing as well. I hope that answers your question. Are we still here?
Oh, I'm sorry, I muted myself. So if that person wanted to add in a little bit more, oh, here we go. So text was the way, so text in quotes was the way would be markup directly to the photo. Oh, the markup button.
Yeah, markup is a little different. That's where you would be drawing on the photo. I'm talking, that's what I'm talking about with, and I see someone else in the chat mentioned captions on photos.
Yes.
That's there's a difference between I mean you're right with that. You're adding the caption, but it's kind of unique to the phone. So the best example I can give is within Snapchat. They have you take a photo of yourself in front of the in front of the Disney World castle, and then you'll have a space to type in across the photo, hanging out with Cinderella. So that's what I'm talking about in the case here, or something that says like it's Johnny's 5th birthday, and so something that you could show and share with others. So I'm saying like directly onto the photo rather than, I'm not, because I know what you're talking about, but I'm not sure if that transfers, like if you were to share it or print it out, like if you wanted to print it out with the text on it, that's what I'm talking about.
All right, and then a couple other comments I'm just going to share. And thanks for putting these questions in the chat, everyone. This is great. Like Stephanie mentioned, someone commented they have an iPhone and can put a caption on the photo. We had another comment saying, rather than use digital zoom, I shoot full size and crop the area of interest.
Yes.
Today's phone cameras have plenty of pixels.
Yes, and that's a personal preference of mine. I refuse to use Zoom unless it is absolutely necessary, just because exactly like you said, you can take a full screen, you can take a full shot of a beautiful area and then just zoom into, say, the deer in the corner, and this deer will still look good, because if you zoom in, what happens is the phone is compensating for that, and you're gonna, even if you don't have, even if your hands don't shake, your phone is going to pick up every little movement, and it's going to make your photo look really bad. I mean, that's if you zoom in a lot. So yeah, definitely try not to zoom in, but that's a personal preference of mine. But yes, that is a very excellent point.
All right, and then I think one more question before, I think I've got everything else, but what is a tag? I think this is a question from somebody who has heard somebody else ask about a tag.
Oh, okay. Tags are in the sense that we're talking about in here, tags are like ways to group things together. So you can have a tag for cats, you can have a tag for breakfast, you can have a tag for Boston. So what a tag does is it groups everything together by that tag. Now, sometimes your phone will sort it for you. Like it'll be like, oh, you took these photos at X and Y latitude and longitude, so you must have been in Chicago, so we're going to put a tag Chicago. Or you can do a manual tag and say, no, I was actually in Evanston, so I'm going to type in Evanston. But yeah, you can create your own tags too, absolutely, and it just helps for organization. And I'm not gonna really touch on that, but that is a good thing to note for the future. So I'm just going to make a note on that.
All right. Thanks for all the great questions, everyone. I'm
Yeah,
taking notes
definitely.
too. Okay.
Okay. So you've taken your photos, you've done your edits. Now you want to organize them. And yeah, so I don't talk really about tagging much in here, but there's similar ways. Your phone, like I said, your phone can split them up. Sometimes your phone will split them up into its own albums, or it'll detect faces and it'll put like the faces into the same group. So if you had a bunch of photos of me, first of all, I apologize. And second of all, they would all be in your phone would recognize my face and group them together, or they would recognize your face and group them all together. Okay, so photos can be separated into albums, and you can have multiple albums, and photos can be in more than one album at a time. Now, let me explain that. Okay, so say you went on a trip and you visited Boston, New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles. Not only can you manually sort your photos by location, you can also decide if you wanted to do, say, show your breakfast at every location. You can group it into breakfasts. So you can have picture of, so you'll have a photo of pancakes in Boston and a photo of pancakes in breakfast. That the same photo can be in two places at the same time, which I think is really cool. So you can have photo in the breakfast album and in its individual city album. Uploading to your computer, I can't believe I'm saying this, but this is becoming a little more outdated as people are not using their computers as much. Their phone is their computer. They don't have dedicated laptops or desktops anymore. But that's another option for you, is you can upload to your computer via USB cord, which is the charging cord that came with your phone. And again, you can organize them into folders. Same thing on your phone, okay? Except generally on your computer, you have a little bit more room. And the cloud, we all have heard about the cloud. So you can upload your photos to a cloud server, which means you can access them from anytime, anywhere. You can share them with whomever you want. So you can make a perfect photo album and then send it to your friend in Texas. So a little bit about the cloud. The cloud is basically another computer in another location where your information is stored that you can access from anywhere. So say you're visiting a friend and you want to show them a digital photo album that you saved in the cloud. Say you took some great photos in your garden, for instance. But you don't have those photos on your phone, you don't have them with you, but you do have them up in the cloud. So you could say go on their computer when you're visiting them, log into your cloud account, and then you can show them the photos of your garden. And just so you know, this is coming up. We have classes on both photo storage and the cloud coming up. So stick around until the end of the presentation if you're interested about hearing more about them. So definitely stick around, because what I talk about is just at the tip of the iceberg. And here are some cloud storage options. Now, these are some, but not all. These aren't the end all be all. And typically, if you have an Android phone, it's going to ask you to either share it. It's going to suggest Google Photos, which is Google Drive, the cloud. I think Samsung has its own. I'm not sure about the others. I know iCloud is default with Apple. You also have Microsoft OneDrive. You have Dropbox and Amazon Drive. Most of these have free storage options, but they're limited. So you might have to pay a little extra a month to save the rest of them. So for instance, I have iCloud and I pay like 99 cents a month and I get 5 gigs of storage, which is a lot of which is quite a bit of storage. I think it's 5, it might be 50. I don't know, because I have a ton of photos. I always get it confused. I do apologize, but it works for me. And I still use Google Drive too. So I have my photos in 2 places, which is good because if I can't access one or something happens to one, I still have them on the other. So you just got to look into them and see whichever one is best for you. I have a question that came through for me. How to locate organizational titles on phone and reorganize them. Like I said, your phone, hopefully I'm understanding this correctly. If I'm not, I apologize. What your phone does is so any photo that you take, like any digital photo, is going to have data is called metadata attached to it. Now now that metadata is gonna be like the location of where you took it, the time you took it, the day you took it, the device you used to take it. You're gonna have all this information on it. And so when you have it on your phone is gonna read that information and it's gonna say, oh, well, you took this photo on July 19th, 2012 in Berlin, Germany. So I'm going to stick it in a Germany folder. It'll probably even be more specific. I'm going to stick it in a Berlin folder. So your phone does that automatically, but that doesn't mean you can't go in there and say, change it to something else. You can make your own album with that. But I mean, what your phone is trying to do is trying to help you. Your phone thinks that by organizing these things for you and by reading the data of your images, it's helping you out. It's the little gremlin who's like, "Yay, I just want to help you." That's basically what it's doing, and it's using that data that's embedded into all your photos to help you figure it out. But it could be wrong. And are there any other questions on organization?
I don't see any in the chat box, and I know you're going to get to this at the end too, because we talk about this at all of our classes, but it might be helpful to say right now that the library does offer 30-minute tech appointments in a one-on-one situation. So a topic like smartphone photography that's going to vary quite widely across the people on this call, depending on your device and your goals. It's hard to kind of answer every question specifically, but we do encourage and offer you to sign up for what we call Tech Time, which you can find on our online calendar. And that gives you a chance to sit down with a library staff member or volunteer and really get your specific questions answered, especially if you're stuck on something or you heard something that's making you think a little bit more and you need help, but that's really specific to your device, especially since we have a hard time like seeing people's devices and we can't show every device here on a class like this. So we'll talk about that at the end, but I do just want to throw out to consider that as an option if we can't answer your question so specifically today.
Yeah, and that also goes for those who ask questions, and if, say, my answer wasn't sufficient enough or I didn't understand what you were asking, because that happens too, and that's totally okay. You can always, schedule an appointment during the tech time at your local branch, and someone would be more than happy to break it down for you. But yeah, as Casey was saying, this is a very generalized class talking about like overall what you can do with your device, because again, I know a lot of you may argue with me on this one, but a lot of you know your devices better than I do. So like I could talk for hours about my specific iPhone that I know and have set up my way. But if I started talking to you about your iPhone as if it were the same or even worse, an Android, you would be like, what are you talking about? I have no clue what you're saying. So definitely think about those if you need like further clarification or or something a little bit more specific. These are really great opportunities. It's a free opportunity. So just schedule it, come on in, and we'll help hopefully answer your question. So just before we wrap up, I have just a quick slide on sharing photos. So, I mean, you take these great photos and you want to share them with other people, right? You want other people to see how amazing of a photographer you are. And trust me, you all are amazing photographers. You just don't realize it yet. I promise you that. So how do you share photos? Now, we're talking specifically from your phone, okay? So if you want to share, say, a text message, you can share a photo by text. You can send it by email. There are photo sharing websites. Some of the ones I've listed here are Flickr and PhotoBucket, Shutterfly, Snapfish. I'm sure, I think they used to have Shutterfly commercials on TV a while ago. that unfortunately I'm not very caught up with my TV, so I hope maybe Casey can back me up on some of these. I think they're all still there. You can also share them obviously on social media. So if you have Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or Pinterest, you can put your photos on there. Of course, because it is social media, there is that chance that there's a chance that somebody might see them. So, if it were up to me, I would do something like on a private account, just share it with like your family or something like that. Of course, you can share it via the cloud. So you can put that garden photo album together, get that going, and then you can share, and then you can email that link out to whoever you want to share it with. Maybe you have a garden club. We've got some master gardener clubs here, which are really awesome. And last but not least, if you want to go old school, and I'm using the term loosely because this is always what I liked doing when I was a kid, was getting my photos printed out, getting them developed. So of course you have your home printers and you can share them that way, but you can go to Walgreens or CVS or Walmart. A lot of these places have apps where you can upload your photos, and then like within an hour you can go pick them up and they're all printed out and they look amazing. So definitely look into those as well. And I see a question in the chat. Before I answer this one, are there any other questions? Because this is pretty much the end of the program. So if you have any other questions, just throw them in the chat right now. And I and Casey will do our best to answer them. So if anyone's got any further questions, I'm going to work on this one here. I wanted to download my photos from my iPhone to a Windows 10 PC. Can you give a class on that? Or from the cloud? So from the cloud to a PC I'm assuming it's either, because you can go from iPhone to PC, or you can go from iPhone to cloud, and then cloud to PC. There's a whole thing in there. So probably this next slide might be for you. So we have Intro to Cloud Computing, which is going to be on Friday, June 11th at the Blake Library in the very large and wonderful Armstrong Wing. So are you confused about the cloud? You can join us for this entry-level discussion where we define cloud computing and discuss ways to use it. So to the person who asked about downloading photos from my iPhone to a Windows PC, so that specifically might be a tech time kind of question, but if you're talking about the cloud, I would really recommend going into this class because that might help you. You also have this great one coming up, another virtual tech talk on Friday, June 25th at 1:30 via Zoom, which is where we are right now. This one is on organizing your digital photos. So do you have photos across all your devices and want them all in one place? Have trouble looking for just a single picture? Then join us for this virtual tech talk where we go over ways to organize your entire photo library and give you tips and tricks to make it easy to search for them. So that might be another one you to check out. So we do have options. And if you take those and you're still confused, that's where we do the tech talk. I see another question in here. Okay. I have lots of pictures that many in my family would like to see. Where should I put them for my family to access? So it depends on what sort of ways that they can access them. My immediate guess would be to put them in the cloud and to organize them into an album and then send that album out to your family. That would be my guess. If they all have Facebook, you can put them on a Facebook album and send them out there. But I would default to the cloud because that's a little bit more universal and you don't need to sign up for an account in order to do that. So that would be my suggestion, personal suggestion. Okay, I'm just gonna keep going a little bit. If you still have questions, please put them in the chat. I see I see what's happening, and I'm more than happy to just jump over there. So this screen, this is our tech time. Okay, so 30 minutes of time with staff to discuss tech questions. Reservations are in fact required. Okay, so unfortunately you can't just walk in and be able to do this. We'd love for that to be the case, but unfortunately, you know, we want to be able to hear what you're asking and get the resources that will best serve you. So that's why we ask for reservations. And I'm just going to read off the link pretty quickly. So here we go. It's martin.fl.us/idea-lab-1, the word one, -1, again, the word one, -tech -help. I know that's a mouthful. So again, we will be emailing these out, so you won't so you'll have it that you can read it. And as you can see, what you're looking at here. Okay, Casey just put it in the chat. This is awesome. Thank you so much, Miss Casey. Okay, can you add more about putting pictures into the cloud? That is definitely going to be better covered in the Intro to Cloud Computing and the organizing digital photos. Because again, this is a very overall general course. Some people might not be comfortable putting their photos in the cloud. So if you are one of the people who would like to learn that, I would strongly encourage you to, Casey, if you don't mind going back one slide. I would strongly encourage you to consider going to these classes. That should probably answer any further questions you have about cloud computing and photo organization. Okay. These are good questions. These are really great questions, everyone. So let's go forward again, Casey, if you don't mind. Bring us up to the next one, which is LinkedIn Learning. Okay, so if you're familiar with our the service that we had earlier, lynda.com, this is the same thing. It's just under a different name. You are going to have to sign up for an account for this, but I promise you it is worth it. So these are online tutorials. These are dedicated. The cool thing that I absolutely love about LinkedIn Learning is that there are tracks you can take. So if you want to learn to become a better digital photographer, there are classes, free classes that you can take with if you have a library card and an account. And you can always ask your staff at your local library to help you get this set up and get you started. But you can just jump right in and you can learn, okay, this is how we take photos. So like right now, what I covered was, again, very broad overview. These will be very in-depth, and they are great classes. There are like worksheets that you can work on. There's assignments. It's really great. It's a great resource. I cannot recommend it strongly enough. If you're interested in just looking them up, you just search the library catalog for LinkedIn Learning, and that's LinkedIn is all one word. Okay, and then Learning. And as you can see, Casey has very kindly added in the links in the chat. So the first one is for the one-on-one tech help, if you're interested in that. The second link is to register for the cloud computing class, which we all hope you attend. And last but not least, to register for the virtual digital photo organization class. So absolutely, so a lot of the questions, you're probably going to get better answers there. Okay, and that's all I've got. Does anybody have any further questions? We have a few more minutes left.
I don't see any other questions in the chat. Ooh.
think I just saw something.
Besides people commenting that it was very helpful and fun.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm very glad you all enjoyed it. I am taking notes, so what everyone's saying, I'm taking notes so I can go back, and so for the next time we do this class, it'll, we change it up just to tweak it every time. So this was a lot of fun for me. I'm glad it was fun for you, and I hope to see you around in the library.
All right, well, that will go ahead and conclude our session for today. Thanks so much, Stephanie, for sharing your knowledge and your experience. I hope all of you get a chance to fiddle with your phones pretty soon, take pictures, experiment. Let us know how it goes. If you have other questions, like Stephanie said, we've got upcoming classes and our one-on-one tech times available. So thanks everyone for joining. I will send out an email to everyone. I try to send it out by Wednesday, but if you got my email yesterday with the link and the confirmation, then you should be hearing from me again before next Wednesday with the link, the slides, and maybe some follow-up information on some of the questions you asked. So thanks again, everyone. Take care. Happy Friday.
Thanks, everyone.